Hi, and welcome to Connect and Collaborate. I am Alex Hopkins, your on-air producer, and we are doing our monthly check-in with Anthony Lambatos of Footers Catering. How are you, Anthony?
I'm doing great, Alex. How are you doing?
Fantastic. Thank you for joining us.
Yes, I love being here and
Yeah.
excited for our conversation today.
Absolutely. Well, before we jump into that, I do need to let our audience know to be sure to sign up for our newsletter that comes out every Tuesday and check out our events page at cobrt.com. And any other radio podcasts that you have missed in the past, check out the radio page as well. But let's find out what's going on at Footers with.
Oh yes, it's always exciting. We're right into our busy season
Yes.
as June is here, and it's awesome. It's we've talked a couple times about wedding season, and that tends to dominate our summer season. We have a lot of other cool events as well, but being part of those special days and getting great feedback from clients about how special the day was, whether it's from the bride or the groom or the parents of the bride. It's really fulfilling, not only for me but also for our team and the hard work that goes into that. Because a lot of times, we've been working with these couples for 6, 9, 12 months, sometimes even longer. So they really become part of the Footers family, and to be able to execute it, it's special. So that's obviously a big part of what's going on.
Yeah, I guess I didn't realize how much planning went in, especially on the catering side, right? It's the one thing that everyone's going to sample at your wedding, right? Yeah.
That's right. Food is an important component to a wedding. So the pressure's on. But the number of times we hear, oh, my guest said that was the best wedding food they've ever had, that's when we know we're doing our job.
Absolutely. So besides wedding season, what else do you have on your plate right now?
Oh, super excited. Just got back from Aspen for the Food and Wine Classic, which is unbelievable. It's the who's who of celebrity chefs, and the opportunity to kind of be right alongside them and to try some amazing food and wines and go to seminars. It's a really cool thing. April and I had the chance to do last year, and then again this year. So lots of fun.
Absolutely. So glad to hear it. So we are going to talk leadership today, yeah?
Yes, one of my favorite topics.
Yes. And we always go on this theme of creating a great place to work, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
That's right.
And
they really go hand in hand, and that's one of the things that I really appreciate, that you can't have great culture without great leadership. And oftentimes it works the other way around, where bad leadership often leads to bad culture. So it's something I really enjoy reading about, studying, learning more about in terms of how can I be a better leader, but also helping our team. We've got 24 people that are in some sort of management or leadership capacity, and so to be able to help them become better leaders and grow. And so we're going to chat a little bit about some of the stuff that I work with them on, and just an overall scope, big picture. Where are we at with leadership?
That's where I was going to start. You took the words right out of my right out of my mouth. So we have the current state of leadership in our country.
Yeah,
talk a little bit about that.
There's a fascinating stat. An organization called the Barna Group did a study, and the study showed that 9 out of 10 Americans believe the nation is facing a crisis of leadership. At first I was taken aback by that, and I said, well, that crisis of leadership, are we sure? But it doesn't take long to look at our current political leaders, our reality TV influence on, who we put up on a pedestal as stars and idols in our community, and what we put on the news and portray to really point that, make that a very clear case for why 9 out of 10 people could really be thinking that, and I think it's sad that gets so much of the spotlight, because I do think there's a lot of great work being done, but the fact that we're struggling, I think, as a country in terms of which direction to go, and it's become very divisive, and one side or the other, whatever side you're on, and we're getting further and further apart from being able to put the hand out and work together, and how do we collaborate on something that's going to move everybody forward, and everybody's going to have to sacrifice a little bit in that, but if we're working toward that common greater good, I think there's a lot more positive that can be happening, and there's companies across, especially here in Denver. I think we're very fortunate to have a great business climate, where for the most part people are working together, and leaders are kind of saying, hey, how do we work together to create something better? We're very fortunate to be one of the top caterers in Denver, but I also think there's a handful of other caterers that do a phenomenal job and know them personally and think they're great, and I enjoy collaborating with them. And there's not this sense of I've got to protect my my little secret sauce over here. It's much more about, hey, if we can work together, ultimately it's going to help everybody. And so
and each company, right, has their own branding style and their own signature sauce, as you mentioned. And why not? If you've got a client that you feel like you're not able to produce your best for them, why not give them the recommendation of somebody that that can provide that?
And it feels good to be able to do that. I mean, we have days where we, don't take on any more events because we're never going to take on more than we can handle in one given day.
Right.
And so in those cases, to have 2 or 3 other people that we know and have trust that they'd take care of that person, that means a lot. And there's not that fear of, oh, if I send it that way, they're never going to come back. I think it's, largely the other way around, where they appreciate you going that extra step of giving them that recommendation. It builds that trust even further.
Well, yeah, it's like the Miracle on 34th Street, right? The Santa Claus. He tells people where to get the better costing skates, right?
Yep.
The lady that he has the conversation with. That's one of my favorite movies. I know it very well. It's a year-round movie, really.
There you go.
Yeah, but that concept is there, right? If you're going to recommend something else because you know that person can afford it, or that they're looking for something specific, the rising tide raises all boats, right?
Yes, exactly. And we also, we're not the best fit for everybody. We feel very strongly about the service we provide, and at some point we understand that we might not be a good fit, and so if we can pair you up with somebody who's going to be a better fit, then we want to be able to do that too. But yeah, I mean, overall, I think it's a tough situation that we're in, and we need more, especially I feel like at the high school level, and even earlier, to start really developing what it means to be a leader. It doesn't just mean be the most popular person.
Yes, agreed.
And I think there's opportunity out there. But another statistic that I saw, and this was a study that was done. 3 in 10 Americans assign the following attributes to their supervisor: my boss lacks clear vision and direction. The poor leadership at work is the most stressful part of my job, and my boss makes me feel controlled, manipulated, or defensive.
Those are harsh statements.
Right? Yeah. Exactly. And when you think about 3 out of 10.
30%.
30% of people said, yes, I feel that way about one of those 3 statements.
Wow.
That's a...
If you're in a leadership position, that should hurt a little bit, right?
Exactly, and it should really be a wake-up call. I mean, especially, I think there's a historical change as well. When you think about, I look back at my dad, and he was, true passion for service, but he was going to make sure things get done, and if it meant yelling at people, if it meant, screaming, if it meant it did, he was going to make sure it got done. And I don't think that that's the case now. People aren't willing to put up with that, where it might have been considered productive years ago. I think that we're slowly uncovering the detrimental impacts of that. Somebody told me once the analogy of when you get yelled at work, or reprimanded in some way, it's like falling on a porcupine. And basically for the next 30 minutes to an hour, you're off in the corner just licking your wounds, trying to pull all those quills out of what just happened to you. So now, not only did, we miss an opportunity for training or, something constructive, we've got somebody that for, a extended period of time is not even going to be doing any productive work. And so
you're making it worse in the long run.
But there's still a lot of people that think that's the best way to manage and lead. And I mean, that stat and that study that the Barna Group put together, I think is kind of depicts that a little bit. The final stat I want to throw out there, this was scary as well. Salesforce did a study, and it said 60% of people said they would trust a stranger more than their boss.
Ouch.
60% of people. That's
60%.
Yes.
A stranger.
A stranger over their boss.
That is mind-boggling, really.
Right? I felt the same way. And you know, sometimes I feel insulated because we're fortunate to have such a great team, and we've put a lot of emphasis at Footers that, you know, we forget that this is going on a lot out in the workplace, and you see a stat like that, and you're like, okay, you know, I feel like at Footers we're not at that 60% level, but if we're not at that 60% level, that means other companies could potentially be closer to the 90% level,
right.
Which is even scarier.
Yeah.
When you think about who gets promoted into leadership positions, how they get there, and what that does, and the damage that it can take, and the toll on not just who they report to, but the company.
Absolutely. No, that's I had not heard of that. That is a huge amount of people that don't trust their bosses, and it's sad to be working in that environment. But as you said, there are a lot of people that are still under the mindset, right, of the yelling or using force on their employees, and so I'd imagine that translates into them not trusting their boss. Why trust you if you can't have a decent conversation with me?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and you know, you throw in some you know, competitiveness and insecurity, and I think that folds into it as well, that people, all of a sudden, bosses feel like they've gotten there. And it's interesting because, you know, what it takes to get into a leadership position is not what it takes to keep you there. And so that, you know, work ethic and that, you know, tireless position that you're fighting and scrapping and clawing, you know, is great for getting, you know, identifying high achievers and performers and people that should be put in those leadership positions. But then all of a sudden, once you're there, your mind really has to shift from this, you know, me first mentality to, okay, how do I help the team that I'm responsible for? And how do I give them the tools they need to succeed? And that can be a tough shift that a lot of managers don't make.
Yes.
And instead become very protective of where they are and how they got there, and do everything they can just to try to hold on to that, as opposed to helping everybody else around them, you know, lift up, which would in turn lift them up.
Yeah.
But it's a very long-sighted view of things, when I think we have a very short-term results now mentality that dominates our culture.
Absolutely. So we know what makes, and I would like to reiterate for our audience here, we're using the term leader and not boss, right? Because that is what you are. Yes, you have a boss type title, but essentially you're a leader, and there's a difference in those, right? And connotation wise, there's a difference.
I totally agree that you don't have to be put in a position to be a leader. There's leaders within every organization that aren't the boss. Most people who are the boss, you know, it doesn't necessarily mean you're a leader. And that's,
Exactly.
I think, the misconception. And that's what we have to work toward, is how do we give those leadership skills to people that get promoted to a position of authority.
Yeah.
But yeah, the semantics of that conversation can be very interesting. Yeah, I mean, when we think about what does it take to be a great leader, I mean, what comes to your mind, Alex?
To be a great leader, wow. Somebody that's listening, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, that one has probably been key for me, because it doesn't matter what kind of worker you have or what department you're in. If you've got somebody, if you've got a custodian that's got great ideas for how to better his service, hear him out, right?
Well, and I would say that the best leaders do that.
Right.
And when they do that, they build the trust of that employee. And so that employee is willing to work 10 times harder for them, because they know they're respected at work. There was I'm throwing out stats left and right here, because I did a lot of research on this for a presentation that I did a couple months ago. But I think it was like 70% of people would work harder with more recognition. And so, I mean, recognition isn't something that costs a lot of money,
Exactly.
but what an easy way to improve that productivity.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, leadership for me, when I reflect on some of the people that I admire as leaders, have a great way to build trust. And I think you're right that that trust starts with listening, and truly listening.
Exactly.
You know, I
There's
mean,
a
how many
difference,
times do you walk into work and somebody says, "Hey, how are you?" Or anywhere,
Yeah.
and then they keep going, right? Like,
Yeah.
like, did you really care? But it's become so much of just a natural thing to say
Yes.
that we just say, "Hey, how are you?" But do we really care?
Are you
And
looking me in the
so
eye when you say it?
challenging our team. If you're going to ask how somebody is, take time, take the 5 minutes, take the 2 minutes to listen and hear how they're doing,
Right.
as opposed to just treating it as a phrase that gets tossed around. So, yeah, that trust I think is also developed. Just you have to have a pretty good ethical and moral compass. People are watching you, especially when you're. I think people are watching you all the time. Your coworkers are watching you, and those are the cues that are telling them: is this somebody that I want to follow? Is this somebody that I trust? Is this, you know? And so every action, the higher up you get in an organization, becomes more and more in a spotlight. And those actions tell the story of who you are as a person and how much people are really willing to trust you and who you are. You know, communication, I think, is something that's huge. We talked about that listening, but on the flip side, are you able to communicate with your team? I talk to a lot of caterers, and, you know, it's always difficult when you're in a situation where you may be struggling and you're not sure as a boss what to do. But as a boss, you feel like you have to have all the answers, and we have to know where to go and what to do. And the most valuable thing you can do at that point in time is to tell them, I don't know. Is just to say, hey, guys, I know we're in a tough situation. We're trying to figure it out. At this point, we don't know what we're going to do.
Exactly.
I will let you know, though, as soon as we do. Here's kind of where we're at, and here's the options that we're looking at. All of a sudden, you know, people want to know what's going on, and if you don't tell them, they're going to make it up.
Yes, so many times. As we've mentioned several times on the show, I am a part-time flight attendant, and it's when you have a delay, people just want to know why, right?
Yes.
And so when I have dealt with good captains and bad captains, and by that I mean I have a captain that comes on and says, we're delayed, we'll give you an update in 15 minutes. That's not helpful.
No.
You're asking for a plane full of passengers to be angry,
Yep.
and I am the face of that, right? He
Yep.
gets to sit in the flight deck and ignore all of that. And so my job, and what I kind of pride myself on this, is making sure I'm honest with people.
Right.
You know what? I'm really sorry, guys. We're delayed because there's a thunderstorm that's happening, and so we've got one runway closed, and so we can't move. We're in
Yep.
a line of 30 other planes. So
Yep.
bear with us, right?
And all of a sudden, you're starting to build trust. You're starting to build understanding, patience.
Yes.
And the same thing happens in companies.
Mhm.
The employees want to know what's going on. They want they want to be trusted with some of that information and understand. And when you give it to them and are open about it, all of a sudden they may actually start to help solve that problem and come
Exactly.
up with some ideas, as opposed to jumping on board with, oh, they're going to do this, this, and that, which it wasn't even an option, but because you didn't tell them, they made it up.
Yeah.
So that's another thing I think that is important as well. And then the final thing that I wanted to touch on, I really like this a lot when I saw it with, and this was from the top leadership competencies. The Harvard Business Review did a study on it, and they surveyed a lot of people. What are the top competencies that leaders need to have? And it was, has the flexibility to change opinions.
I like
And
that.
I really, it resonated with me a lot, because I think that vulnerability is something that most people miss as a leader. We talked about being open when you don't know, saying, I don't know the answer, but I'm working on, is more powerful than that person that sits on their perch and feels like they have to have all the answers and always spews the answers. I think it's so much more relatable when somebody can say, you know what, I thought this was the right answer, but after talking to everybody and hearing you guys out, I think you're right. I think we need to go in this direction. And that is a really, really powerful thing for a leader to be able to do that and say that. And I think, again, goes back to, what are we talking about with leadership? We're talking about that building trust. That builds an incredible amount of trust that they know you're listening, you're open to their ideas, and it's not just set in stone my way or the highway. And so that collaborative approach that starts to build when somebody can admit, hey, I think, it's actually going to be better to go down this direction is a really, really powerful thing.
Yeah, and respectful, right? It's respect across the board. That's one of the key things that I think most leaders, good leaders, adopt, is being able to respect everybody in the workplace, and they're going to respect you right back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'll take that even one step further. It's respecting people and valuing them for more than the job they do. We don't... the conversation about work-life balance, I think, has gone off the rails a little bit. In too much in terms of this, we have to have personal time and we have to have work time. I agree with that. But I think we have to start looking at the person as a whole and stop thinking that, when I open the door, professional Anthony's here now, and I just walked away from personal Anthony. No, like, I'm the same person. And if my life is in shambles personally, it's going to impact my work. And if my work is falling apart, then it's going to impact my personal life. So why are we trying to create this big divide between the two as opposed to this work-life integration? And how do they seamlessly flow together to a point that is manageable and that we have time for things that we want to do personally, and we have that time to do things that are work, but it might not be in this pocket of 9 to 5.
Exactly.
I mean, especially now, I think there's a lot of millennials get a bad rap.
We really do.
You give them flexibility, they're going to work their tail off for you. And they may want to work at 10 o'clock at night. And that's their most productive time, from 10 to midnight or 8 to midnight. And at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, 3 o'clock, they want to go do something else. They want to go work out. They want to go hang out with some friends. They want to, whatever they want to do, that's more valuable to them there. But understanding what's important to each individual person. And when you talk about that respect of, I'm going to value this as a person and not just what they bring to Footers Catering.
Right.
And I think that's been a good shift that we've kind of had at Footers, and understanding that we need to be here to help them as a whole. And sometimes that's going to mean on the personal level, and sometimes that's going to mean on the professional level. But we're not just going to say there's a divide and don't bring your personal problems to work.
Right.
And, leave your issues at the door. It's like, that just doesn't happen.
No.
If you get some crushing news, that afternoon off is going to be much more productive than you trying to sit in the office thinking about work and whatever else is going on. And you're probably going to come back the next day even more energized to get done whatever you need to get done.
Exactly. And on the same side, you have those people, right, that are okay with still working through.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It's not everyone. My sister's one of those people that thrives when she knows that she has a problem but still has to go to work. She thrives at work. That's where she prides herself, and she can separate like that.
And sometimes it can be a good distraction.
Right.
But everybody's different.
Exactly. And knowing that is key.
That's where that transition goes into understanding the person as a whole. What does this person need? And trying to treat everybody, especially as you grow within a company and you have 10, 15, 20, 30, 50, 100, 500 employees, you can't treat them all the same. They're uniquely different. You have to treat them fairly.
We're not all sheep.
But the more the leaders in your company understand that, the more successful you're going to be.
Absolutely. We are going to take a quick break here on Connect and Collaborate. I am excited to talk about this leadership within company culture, right?
Yes.
So stay with us here on Connect and Collaborate. Check out other shows with Anthony Lambatos on our radio page at cobrt.com/radio-podcast. And be sure to like and subscribe our YouTube page. Welcome back to Connect and Collaborate. I am having a fascinating conversation here with Anthony Lambatos of Footers Catering. We are talking leadership. And in the last segment, we talked about the current state of leadership and what makes a good leader, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about why leadership matters and how it can impact the culture.
Yeah, I think we talked about the dangers and the overall crisis of leadership that we may be facing as a country. And I still have enough belief that we can get out of it, that we've got some opportunity here, and I think people are doing some amazing things.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, when you think about the costs of bad leadership, the number one thing that jumps out to me is turnover. I mean, when you look at it, I think the statistic is like 50% of people quit a job because of their manager. And so we, have the saying, people don't quit jobs, they quit their boss.
Absolutely.
We've had a number of conversations here with unemployment at historically low levels in Colorado. We can't afford to be putting people in leadership positions that are going to be bad bosses, because that's when you talk about opening up the back door for people to start flowing out, that's a good way to do it.
Yes.
And so that is such a huge component when you think about leadership and why it matters. That 50% of people leave a job because of their boss.
Yeah.
You start fixing that, and all of a sudden your turnover problem might turn around a little bit. The second thing is productivity. We touched on it a little bit in the first segment, but there was a statistic that employees are working at 60% of their potential. And so only about 60% of their potential. That most people come in and they kind of have this baseline, but the great bosses have the ability to get that 30-40% more productivity out of them because they're motivating, because they're inspiring. And then the other one was a study that was done by the University of Warwick, and it said that happy employees are up to 22% more productive than unhappy employees.
Wow.
And so
Quite a
just
jump.
that shift, 22%.
Yeah.
You think about the difference in somebody's
Yeah.
productivity, and we talked about the 60% potential. We're throwing out numbers here. But at the end of the day, the science behind it is, and when people are happy, when they're enjoying their job, when they enjoy who they work with, they're going to want to work harder.
Yeah.
They want to be there. They want to be there for their team members. And that's something that you can't underestimate, that all of a sudden, when I'm happy and I'm charging ahead and I see over here to my right that somebody else is doing awesome work, I'm all of a sudden more inspired to do great work. And so when you're surrounded by those people, that's really the gold that comes into the I feel like the culture piece of it, way beyond, we've talked at length about the ping pong table and the perks, and those aren't the things that really make a great culture. It's let's do great work together, and let's feel really great about it and be valued and recognized for that work.
Well, and instilling in your employees, that you trust them to make great decisions and do a great job on their own. I don't know about you, but when I get a compliment about something good I've done at work, it makes my entire week. I'm like, yeah, did you hear? I did a good job.
We all
Yeah.
want to do a good job.
Yeah.
People don't come to work saying, I'm really going to screw up today. Right? Like I
Exactly.
don't believe people come to work with that attitude.
Yes.
I think they come to work and then things start to happen that make them say, I don't really care.
Right?
And
I'm
when
not
I don't
getting
care,
recognized for the amazing job I
why?
did.
But yeah, I don't feel valued. I don't care. Why should I even bother to do anything?
Yeah.
But those are things that happen as a product of the environment that they come into. And so when you think about that leadership, the impact that it's having, in a positive way, also on the negative side, it can cause a real loss of productivity, kind of like you said.
Yeah.
So, but on the flip side, I love your example. That
Yeah.
Just that simple recognition and the fact of somebody else noticing you're doing, acknowledging that you're doing some great work,
Yeah.
is extremely motivating.
It really is, and and it's not just your boss that has to say it, right?
Uh-huh.
Even a coworker noticing,
Yep.
right? Someone who's my equal, you notice that I've done a good job. That's really heartwarming and motivating to hear.
It's the power of our Jimmy Buck program. That
Yeah.
pays tribute to my dad. When our team does things that embody those core values, they could submit requests for one another to give, a Jimmy Buck. And a Jimmy Buck can be given by anybody.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be given by somebody in a leadership position. And so, it's a fun for me to always give them out because people are so flattered and excited by which of their peers or some of their bosses
Right.
recognized what an awesome job they were doing.
Yeah, probably a really fun part of the job, right?
I love it. It's why I hold on to being the one that gives most of them out. Plus, I think it's important that they know that I'm aware of some of the good things that are that they're doing, and to get it from the boss is kind of cool.
Oh yeah, absolutely, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. Oh, he knows too.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I want to talk a little bit. You have this personal leadership philosophy.
Yes. So
Yeah. So tell me about that.
this is I guess a topic that I stumbled upon when I was just doing research on leadership, and this idea of a PLP came up quite a bit, a personal leadership philosophy, and it resonated with me because we do this for our companies, where we put these goalposts and sights and direction for where the company is going and how the company should operate. And I think most people at their core probably have a personal leadership philosophy. They just don't take the time to put it on paper.
Yeah.
And I was one of those people. I'd never done it before, never even thought about it, and so it was one of the most valuable exercises that I ever did, because it forced me to sit down and say, okay, what do I really believe in as a leader, and how do I want to operate? How do I want to run my company from a personal standpoint? And there is overlap. I mean, as a leader of a company, there's overlap into to how the company operates, but there's a lot more people involved. And I run the company with my wife April, and she oversees a huge part of our operations. She does most of the heavy lifting, is what I like to say. But she's got her leadership philosophy and how she's going to lead, and we agree on a lot of things. But there's things that we do differently, and that's okay as well. But having it has allowed me to be even more clear in my decision making. That's one of my struggles, is I tend to overanalyze things, and kind of the analysis by paralysis. Of, you start tinkering and thinking about it, and okay, this, that, and at some point I just got to make a decision. And so having those guidelines, and I came up with these 9, one-line sayings of this is who I am, has helped me. That when I'm stuck, I can kind of reference back to some of those,
Okay.
and say, okay, is this consistent with me and who I want to be as a leader? And so it was really fascinating. It was it was fun too, because I shared it with our team. And most of them agreed. They say, "Yep, that's Anthony. I totally agree with that." So that was good. That made me feel good that what I had been, what I set out to do and set out to be as a leader, I had been operating that way for some time.
Yeah.
But the process was one that I didn't take lightly. That I sat down and thought about it, and it wasn't just a I'm going to sit down for an hour and hammer this out. It was something that I thought about for a few weeks. That I'd write some things down, and then I'd come back to and scratch something out and change it. So there's a couple things I want to share, because if you're interested in doing it, there's plenty of resources online. You can jump on and just Google personal leadership philosophy, and you'll find more than you can even probably care to read about.
On that one.
But I loved these 5 questions as a guide for coming up with your own. The first one: what do you truly believe?
It's a tough one.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is. When you start writing on what do you truly believe, it can be overwhelming. And so I suggest you think about it from leadership capacity. What do you believe what do you truly believe as a leader? And going through some of the exercises that we started with, just asking yourself, what makes a great leader? It's different for everybody, and there's nuances to it that they're more important. Some people, leading by example is the most important thing, and that's, I'm going to put my fist in the ground. And some people, it's more conveying and teaching others how to do it. Neither one is wrong. They're both very good, great leadership qualities. You as a leader have to determine which one, where do you want to gravitate towards?
Yeah.
Which is the more important one to you. And it doesn't have to be one or the other, but I think you have to really start thinking about and asking some of those questions.
Yeah.
Which values do you refuse to compromise?
I like that one.
Yes, right? It's a good one when you start thinking about, okay, if I'm in this situation, what am I willing to do?
Yeah.
And kind of even some, I mean, theoretical is always tough, but when you start putting yourself, okay, what if this happened? You know,
Right.
which way would I go? And forcing yourself to kind of go one way or the other, I think can be really valuable. And we have our values at Footers, and to an extent, this is your personal values. What terms, me personally, what are my values that I'm not going to compromise under any circumstances?
Yeah.
And there was some stuff that started to pop out for me. And I was like, okay, yep, that's definitely one.
What kind of situations did you put yourself into to get to those?
The impact of you think about, sometimes it's right for the company and sometimes it's right for the employee. Like
Okay.
To what extent?
Oh, okay.
To what extent are we willing to sacrifice profits
Right.
for the good of our company?
Mm-hmm.
For me, I want us to create a great place to work. That is first and foremost the most important thing to us. I believe if we create a great place to work, the financial success will take care of itself. Yeah, we have to do a lot of other things over there,
Obviously.
but at a high level, I am not going to tolerate people that disrespect our team. And so in the sales process, if we have people that just aren't very respectful to my sales team, they have full permission to say, you know what, I don't think we're going to be the best fit.
Okay.
So from a standpoint of we're missing out on that potential dollar that person would potentially spend, and you could argue is detrimental to the company, we're going to side with our team in that situation
Right.
and back them up, and that sets the example and the precedent that it's not just lip service.
Right.
We're willing to turn away business if it's going to be in the situation where they're not going to be respectful of our team. Our team works hard. They do a great job. We do provide, we're in the service industry. We want to provide a great service, but that doesn't give you license to treat us like the hired help.
And there are definitely people out there that do that, and there will always be people that do that. So I like that you
Exactly.
reserve that for your crew, that they reserve the right to say thanks, but no thanks, we're not a good fit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that you know, those are the types of things that I was kind of walking through. Like, what's
Yeah.
more important to me? Is it, you know, extreme financial wealth, or is it, you know, truly building a company that's special and a
Yeah.
culture of people that are awesome? And so those
Yeah.
are the situations, I guess, you start to come up with or think about. Some of them are past. Some of them you look at other situations of people when you hear stories about, like, what would I have done in that situation?
Yeah.
It's I mean, it's kind of a morbid example, but when you think about the school shootings and how terrifying and sad that is, and you hear the stories about, you know, the brave acts of certain people and what they're willing to do in those situations, you know, asking
Yeah.
yourself, like, well, is that you? And could I be in that situation?
Right.
How would I respond? I don't know.
And
you may
can't.
never know.
Exactly.
But at
Hopefully
least,
you never know.
Right. But at least putting yourself in that position of thinking about, like, okay, what would I do, and how would I respond? How would I act in those situations? And that's a very extreme example
Yes.
that I'm
Yeah.
sharing. It doesn't have to be
Right.
quite that extensive, but I think challenging yourself to think about some of those situations and where you would be and how
Right.
you would act can be a very
I imagine,
powerful exercise.
Yeah, I imagine you learned a lot about yourself, not just as a leader, but in general, doing this exercise, right?
Definitely, and it just felt good to put things down, to actually put pen to paper.
Yeah.
I mean, there's something therapeutic, and also it was powerful for me because once I wrote it down and I had the, you know, which we'll share in a minute here, what my 9, you know, tenets are of my leadership philosophy. It felt real, and it felt like, okay, now I had to be accountable to it.
Yes.
You know, I can't deviate from this anymore. I've not only committed this to myself, but also I shared it with my team. This is who I want to be as a leader, and I gave them permission to call me out on some of that stuff in terms of, you know, hey, if I'm not acting in this way and by these, like, I want to know about that.
Yeah.
But when you don't do that, it gives you the license to change your mind and say, well, yeah, but this happened, and I got offered a lot of money to do this, so maybe that's okay.
Okay.
And we start rationalizing and reasoning.
I'm so good at rationalizing.
We all are. We all are. It's a
Yeah.
very easy thing to do.
Yeah.
But I think at the end of the day, once you put it on paper, for me it had a very pretty significant impact. That it took it from just like this idea and general, kind of direction to very clear. Third question: how comfortable are you with who you are? I love this one because it challenges you to think about do I need to be more like somebody else? And that sounds bad in a way. Trying to be like somebody else, we need to try to be who we are. But if you don't like who you are, then it's okay to aspire to change that and to shift that and alter your behavior in terms of, this is more who I want to be as a person. I don't want to be looked at as a person who people see and it exudes these 5 tendencies. We're going through a 360-ish review at Footers, where basically your peers and bosses are asked 2 questions about you. What's the best part about working with you, and what's one thing you can do to improve your work performance? And it's a really great exercise to go, and it can be humbling to see this. And I tell everybody, look, it's not, get away from each line and what each individual said. Take a step back and read between the lines, and what's the overall message or theme that they're trying to convey. And when we can do that, all of a sudden we can see this is how we're perceived. And I love the saying that the customer's not always right, but their perception is. And so the same applies here. These may not be correct, true statements, but that's how somebody perceives it. And overall, if it's coming up 3-4 times, that is a general perception. Is that how you want to be perceived, or do you want to shift that and be perceived in a different way? And if so, your behavior needs to change.
I imagine that it's like a veil lifting, right? When you look at it from that perspective.
And some of it again, but you hear it and it's like, okay, now I have to do something about it.
Yeah.
Next question: what causes you to have the core values that you have? I liked this because when you say, I believe in this, challenging yourself. Okay, why do you believe in that?
Right.
What led you to that? Is a really good thing, because it all of a sudden makes it, it strengthens it for you, and you understand. Okay, here's truly why I believe this. I saw so many examples of bad places to work, and that has totally strengthened why I want to create a great place to work. I saw how productivity can be terrible. I saw how it's demotivating. I saw how it stifles innovation. Those are the reasons that I truly believe in creating a great place to work. But I can easily point to those 5 things and say, yep, that's why this is important.
Interesting. Yeah, that one, I feel like I probably have the hardest time with that one. But yeah, I can say all day long that I will never fold on integrity, right? That's my go-to. But why?
Yep.
Why is that?
Why is integrity so important?
Yeah.
And what does integrity mean to you?
Exactly.
Is it just, when somebody tells you something, you don't tell anybody else? Is it always telling the truth? Is it, there's different levels of it. So, once I went through these questions, it was kind of cool to just start writing of like, here's all the things I believe. And then like I said, combine some things, change things around. So we'll just jump in and we'll do them. I have 9 of them. That I came up with.
We missed this last one real quick. What is the single most important thing to you?
Oh, yes. Yeah. Final question to think about. So we had, 5 questions there. We'll recap them. What do you truly believe? Which values do you refuse to compromise? How comfortable are you with who you are? What causes you to have your core values? And what is the single most important thing to you? And that one I think is tough because it just, again, we can say a lot of things are important to us.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden when we start, prioritizing and you start saying, okay, I got to get to 1, it's not necessarily about getting to 1, but it's about getting from 20 to 3.
Right.
Right. Like let's get clear on the overall focus.
Yeah.
And so for me, that was kind of, thinking about where should these really be focused and honed in on.
Yeah.
So.
Yes. Let's let's talk about your your 9.
The Anthony Lambatos personal leadership philosophy. And if nothing else, I hope this inspires one person to go out and put together their own personal leadership philosophy, because it was, like I said, such a valuable exercise for me, and I think it's helped me in my leadership ability with my team, and to help them be better leaders as well.
Well, and I like that you took time with it, right? You said that you thought about this for a good couple weeks.
It was a couple weeks. I mean, on and off, pulling it back out. But I was thinking about it quite a bit. And all of a sudden, we talked about those situations, and I didn't necessarily have them off the top of my head, but all of a sudden you start to be in close situations, or you see something else, and you say, wait a minute, how would that have, what would I have done there? And so that I think helps with the process as well.
You're allowing yourself to observe yourself to get to those cores.
Exactly.
Yeah. So.
All right. So number 1, work hard and good things will happen. I've always felt like hard work is important. That you know, my dad instilled a great work ethic in me at a very early age, and seeing him run a business, I understood how important hard work. And he is one of the hardest workers I know. And so that was paramount to me, and I've been very fortunate that when you work hard, good things will happen. I saw a quote. Actually, I was reading something today, and Mark Cuban said, work as if somebody else is working 24 hours a day to take everything you've worked so hard from you.
Oh.
Like I was like, that's fascinating, and I don't necessarily take it to that extent. That but I do believe that at some point you have to be willing to put in the hard work.
Absolutely.
Number 2, see the best in people. If you see the best in people, you're going to see it. And if you see the worst in people, you're going to see that too. And so when I have the choice, I want to try to see the best in people and assume the best as well. We talked about people don't show up saying they're going to do a bad job. I think people show up ready to do a great job. Let's pull that out of them. And so that's always been something of me. Even those times where you start to think, oh, that's bad, or that person's going down the wrong path. Like, okay, what are the positives that I can pull out of this? At some point, if somebody shows you who they are over and over and over again, you should probably believe them. But
yes.
Number 3, lead by example. I do think you have to. We talked about people watching and everything being in the spotlight. If I expect somebody else to be doing things in a certain way, then I need to be doing that as well. Choose to be positive. I think that's.
I like that one.
It's we have a choice, and you can see 2 sides of every coin in every situation, and you can see the positive side of it, and you can see the negative side of it. When you choose to see the positive, I think it opens up a world of possibilities. Inspire others to be awesome. That's something that I think is at the core of Footers, and I really, truly want our team to be awesome. And so
Team Awesome,
that's right, exactly. And this kind of coincides with it. I felt like there was a different nuance, though. Work doesn't have to suck, so make it fun.
Yes.
That's Footers to a T. I, have seen how productivity skyrockets when people are having fun. Challenge the status quo. We've been in business for a long time. We don't want to do things the same way we've done them for 35 years.
Right.
And then number 8, there's always more to learn and room to improve. I truly believe that once we think we've arrived and once we think we're at the pinnacle of something, that's when we're totally wrong. And the more we learn about things, the more it opens up possibilities. And then the final thing, number 9, be open and honest. We talked about the communication.
Yes.
For me, it's important to be open with people and honest with them. So that's my 9 tenets of my personal leadership philosophy.
I love this. So thanks for talking leadership with me, Anthony. It's been a great show.
This has been awesome. Thank you, Alex.
Of course. And again, be sure to check out this interview and more at cobrt.com/radio-podcast. Like and subscribe our YouTube page. Have a wonderful day.